So I'm going to be talking about the recommendation in here. Just to also, I mean, Roger's already said this rapid evidence review does come with caveats, and we have to kind of say that before we start. The EEF at the moment are kind of looking at this in a bit more detail, but this was taken from what they had, which was basically a lot of research around adult learning, as well as kids that, the age that we teach. And it was kind of older pupils, and some of you might be teaching younger pupils and so on. So, but the general principle that comes through, and it is, for me, this has been the most important message through all of this, that it's the quality of teaching. But one of the things, the recommendation here, number 4, is that we have to support pupils to work independently. Well, it's not exactly rocket science, is it, in some ways? I mean, it's not like you wouldn't expect that to come out. But again, as Roger says, I think it's worth looking at this in more detail, because again, this isn't new, but the point is it isn't new. And so therefore there are some things that we can kind of look at to help us as we kind of struggle with this. And the first thing is that if you think of the experience that we have so far in this kind of thing, we've probably all set homework in the past. Homework is our previous experience of setting home learning. And yet, this is a quote from Dylan William, which says that most homework teachers say is crap. Well, we've all, I mean, I'm certainly guilty of sometimes setting homework because I know I have to, because I know that parents will complain if I don't. And it's a really important thing that we think about what we're setting and why. And that's when we see them in between. If we look at the evidence that we had around homework already, this comes from the toolkit, the EEF toolkit. And when they looked at primary homework, that actually the evidence is quite weak that it actually improves outcomes. Secondary, it's a little bit stronger, but what we do know is that it has to be set thoughtfully, it has to be set purposefully, it has to be set with an end in mind. And so before we've even started, we knew that homework was tricky, and homework was something that we had to talk about. So, this is a study here, a review that talks about what we have to think about. We have to make sure that it has a purpose, that it's meaningful, that students know why we're setting it. Efficiency shouldn't take up too much time. Ownership, that our students actually feel like they should be doing it, that they're motivated to do it, that it belongs to them, I guess, in some ways. There's some point to it. And that they're able to do it, right? I mean, we've all been set tasks where we feel that they're out of our range of anything that we can attempt to do, and we give up really before. I'm like that with maps. Someone gives me a map, I cannot read maps, and I just glaze over and I don't even try. We have to make sure they've got the skills to be able to kind of attempt it in the first place. I love the one at the end. It's got to be inspiring. Okay, yeah, I'm not quite sure how much of my homework that I set is inspiring, but I understand the sentiment. And actually, the point is that we're not just setting it for the sake of it. And that's with homework. That's with homework when we are seeing all of these students in between. We have a chance to talk to them. We have a chance to remind them why it's important to do it. We have a chance to kind of teach them the stuff. Here, we don't get that opportunity, and so all of those things are still there, but they're kind of heightened. And independence, one of the, if you read research about this, the thing that they talk about a lot is the ability for students to self-regulate their own learning, and that's such a big part of this independence. And I know that some of you were in the session that I did before. I think, oh God, it feels like years ago. I know you were, because I've seen John, who used to be my swimming coach for a while, and so he's in that group and he's here today. So I assume some of you have come across metacognition and self-regulation. Also, I know that Kate will have talked about it a lot as well. So For students to be independent learners, they need to have well-developed self-regulation. And just to remind you that this self-regulation term does encompass not just the cognition, not just the bits that we teach them, the knowledge that they need to do of how to do things, but the metacognition, which is being able to look at how they're learning, how they're understanding, how successful certain strategies were, and respond to that. You know, it's not just kind of reflecting, it's actually responding to that as well. But you know, at the moment for me, the most important one is this motivation. And motivation is something that often gets forgotten when we talk about self-regulation. We're quite good at thinking about metacognition, but motivation is a huge part of it, especially when we don't have that face-to-face contact with our students all the time. And so, you know, it's worth looking at the research behind metacognition. Just to remind you, there's a guidance report about it and it has several recommendations. But the one that I'm really focusing on today, as I talk about what the EEF have done with kind of planning remote teaching, is to look at this recommendation here. And one of the really key recommendations from the Metacognition and Self-Regulation Guidance Report is that, first of all, metacognitive skills can be taught. They don't necessarily develop automatically or naturally over time. And not only can they be taught, but they should be taught. You know, that the most effective learners have very well developed self-regulation and metacognitive skills, and that means that we can take those skills that they have developed and actually explicitly teach them, kind of bottle them, distill them, and help those learners that don't do this already. And it's really important that we do in normal teaching, but I would say especially right now. And if you think about why that is, this is a slide that I've taken from Kingsbridge Research School, which and I'll point you towards a webinar they did that you can see. But they've just kind of pointed out some of the things that we do in class without even realizing we do it. You know, if you've got 30 kids in front of you, without even noticing that you're doing it, because it comes so automatically after a while, you will be taking in the body language, for example. I'll tell you, one of the most freaky things about doing this at the moment is I can't see anyone. And so you can't pick up on those kind of non-verbal signals. You might all be asleep for all I know, you know, and whereas when we're kind of, usually when we have people in front of us, it's those little kind of hints, those eyebrow raises, those kind of people switching off, looking out the window, looking scared about things. And you will be kind of thinking, oh yeah, no, I need to go and just check if he needs me to go and help him with that, or I just need to come back to that because they look like they're struggling. Now, we can't do that. We can't do that with remote learning. So not only is metacognition and self-regulation important in normal life, but it's especially important when we don't have those kids in front of us to do those things that we do quite naturally and almost do the scaffolding for them. We can't scaffold for them anymore when they're not in front of us. So we know that we need to support pupils to work independently, and this will help them.